Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. It all started with a scream that got stuck in my throat. I woke up tangled. That was the first thing I noticed. Not tangled in my sheets, though that was part of it, but tangled in myself. Something long and silky was draped across my face, tickling my nose, my own hair. But my hair had never been long enough to do that. I kept it buzzed short. A number 2 on the sides, slightly longer on top. Easy, simple, masculine. This was not that. This was a curtain of fine, dark brown silk. My hand flew to my face, and that's when the second wave of wrongness hit. My skin. It was smooth, unnaturally, impossibly smooth. Like polished marble, the usual morning roughness, the faint hint of stubble I'd been so proud of cultivating for the past year, was gone. In its place was a softness I'd only ever felt on the back of my twin sister Lily's hand. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. I sat bolt upright, the thin cotton of my pajama top pulling tight across my chest. And then came the third, and most terrifying, realization. There was something there, a subtle pressure, a tender fullness under the fabric that was absolutely, fundamentally not mine. It wasn't much, just a slight swell, but it was enough to make my stomach lurch. I pressed a trembling hand against my chest, and my fingers met a soft resistance that shouldn't exist. My breath hitched. I scrambled out of bed, my legs feeling strangely light and uncoordinated. The room was dark, save for the sliver of moonlight cutting through the blinds. But I could see my reflection in the full-length mirror on my closet door. A silhouette. A stranger's silhouette. The shoulders weren't as broad as they should be. The line from the waist to the hips had a gentle curve that was entirely alien. And the hair. It cascaded around the shape of the head, falling just past the shoulders. I fumbled for the light switch, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The fluorescent light flickered on with a hum, flooding the room in a harsh, unforgiving glare. And I saw him, or rather, I saw her. The face staring back at me was mine, but it was also not mine. The bone structure was the same: my nose, my chin, my dark eyes. But everything was softened, refined. My jawline was less angular, my cheeks a little fuller, my eyebrows gracefully arched instead of straight and boyish. My lips looked fuller, pinker, and those eyes, my eyes, were wide with a terror that was entirely my own. The person in the mirror was a girl, a pretty girl, maybe, but a stranger wearing my pajamas, standing in my bedroom, living in my body. The scream that had been stuck in my throat finally ripped its way out. It wasn't my voice. It was higher, clearer, a sound of pure, unadulterated panic that belonged to someone else. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of the impossible. I stumbled back, my hand flying to the nape of my neck, where a tiny, almost imperceptible pinprick of soreness throbbed. What had happened? Was I dreaming? Was I going insane? And then I remembered the fight. Just a few hours earlier, the house had been ringing with the sounds of our argument. It was a classic Alex and Lily showdown. We were twins. But we were like two sides of a coin, constantly at odds. I was logic, sports, and a stubborn refusal to complicate things. She was drama, art, and a passion for social justice that I found both admirable and exhausting. The topic that night had been gender roles. It started innocently enough, over a TV show where the male lead was being particularly clueless. "See, typical," Lily had said, gesturing at the screen with a piece of popcorn. "He literally cannot comprehend what she's going through. Men are just wired differently. They don't get it." That's a stereotype. I'd shot back, not even looking up from my phone. You can't just lump half the population together like that. It's not about being a man. It's about being a decent person. "Oh, please, Alex." She'd rolled her eyes, a move she'd perfected since we were 6. "It's easy for you to say. You've never had to walk home at night clutching your keys like a weapon. You've never had a teacher call on a boy instead of you. Even when your hand was up first. You've never had to smile when some creep tells you to. And you've never had to feel like you can't show any emotion or you'll be called weak, I retorted, my defensiveness flaring up. Or that you're expected to be strong and tough all the time, even when you're not feeling it. Everyone has their own pressures. Lily, it's not a competition. It's not a competition, but it's also not the same, she insisted, her voice rising. The world is built for you. Alex, you get the benefit of the doubt. You get to be the default. You will never, ever understand what it's like to be a girl, to live in a body that people feel they have a right to comment on, to judge, to control. That's ridiculous, I'd scoffed, finally looking at her. You're being dramatic. Things are more equal than you think. That was the line that did it. Her face hardened. The playful annoyance vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp anger that always unnerved me. No, Alex, she'd said, her voice dangerously quiet. You're being ignorant. You sit there in your comfortable little world and lecture me about equality. You have no idea. You think it's just about being told to smile or whatever. It's 1,000 tiny things every single day. It's the way you move, the way you talk, the way you think about your own safety. It's a whole different reality. She stood up, her fist clenched at her sides. You wouldn't last one day. You honestly think it's so easy, fine. But don't you dare tell me I'm being dramatic. You will never understand. With that, she'd stormed out of the living room. I remember feeling a surge of righteous indignation. She was the one being unfair, making sweeping generalizations. I was angry, hurt that she thought so little of my capacity for empathy. I'd retreated to my room, slamming the door behind me, and thrown myself onto my bed, my mind still churning with rebuttals and counter-arguments. I had fallen asleep angry, wrapped in a blanket of my own stubborn pride. And now, standing in front of my mirror, a girl with my face in a stranger's body, her final words echoed in my head with a chilling, prophetic resonance. You will never understand. A sick feeling washed over me. Lily, she had to have something to do with this. But how? How was this even possible? It was a prank. It had to be. A sick, elaborate, impossible prank. I tried to call out her name, but the sound that came out was a choked, feminine sob. My body wasn't my own anymore, and I had a terrible, sinking feeling that my sister was the one holding the keys. My frantic thoughts were a chaotic storm. I splashed cold water on my new, softer face, hoping it would shock my reflection back to normal. It didn't. The girl in the mirror just looked back at me, her dark hair dripping onto her delicate collarbones, her eyes wide with my own terror. I tried to flex my biceps, a stupid, reflexive gesture of masculinity, but the muscles that rippled under the smooth skin were leaner, more defined in a dancer's way, not a weightlifter's. I was pacing my room like a caged animal when my door creaked open. Lily stood there, leaning against the frame. She was already dressed for the day in jeans and a hoodie, looking completely, infuriatingly calm. She held a mug of coffee in one hand and something small and black in the other. It looked like a remote control. "Morning, sis," she said, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. The word sis hit me like a slap. My voice, when I finally found it, was a high-pitched, reedy thing I didn't recognize. "Lily, what did you do to me? What is this?" I gestured wildly at my body, at my hair, at the whole horrifying tableau. "Consider it an educational experience," she said, taking a serene sip of her coffee. "I told you you'd never understand. I'm just providing a more hands-on curriculum. This isn't funny, change me back." Right now, I took a step toward her, intending to grab her, to shake the answer out of her, but my legs felt wobbly, my center of gravity all wrong. Lily didn't even flinch. She just raised the small black remote. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Alex, or should I say, Alexa. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" My blood ran cold. "What is that thing?" "This," she said, holding it up, "is the key to your new reality. Remember Mr. Henderson, our biology teacher? The one who's always talking about his weird side projects in bioengineering, turns out. He's a bit of a genius, and a bit careless with his lab equipment. She walked into my room, her eyes scanning my new form with a critical, appraising look. He developed this, a bio-integrated microchip. It can interface directly with a person's endocrine and nervous systems. It can rewrite hormonal balances, trigger cellular restructuring, even remap motor skills and influence personality predispositions. It's basically a total human override. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process the words. It sounded like something out of a science fiction movie, not something happening in my suburban bedroom on a Tuesday morning. You're lying. You can't just do that. Oh, but I can, she said, her smile widening. It was surprisingly easy. A tiny little injection at the base of your neck while you were sleeping off your righteous anger. You didn't even stir. My hand shot to the back of my neck again, to the sore spot. It was real. This was all real. You're insane, I whispered, backing away until my legs hit the edge of my bed. I'm innovative, she corrected. Now watch. She pointed the remote at me and pressed a button. A strange tingling sensation shot down my spine, electric and unnerving. I felt a pulling at the roots of my hair. I watched, horrified, in the mirror as the dark brown strands lengthened, flowing down past my shoulders, past my shoulder blades, until they settled in a shimmering curtain at the middle of my back. She pressed another button. Let's try the voice, she mused. I opened my mouth to protest, to scream, but the sound that emerged was a perfect, clear soprano. Stop it. The words sounded like bells, melodic and feminine, a complete betrayal of the rage and fear I felt inside. See, so much more pleasant, Lily said with a satisfied nod. She made a few more clicks. I felt a subtle shift in my hips, a slight narrowing of my waist. My face in the mirror seemed to soften even more, the last vestiges of my male identity melting away like wax. The reflection was no longer a feminized version of me. It was a completely convincing girl, a girl who looked like she could be Lily's twin sister, which I supposed, in a terrifyingly literal sense, I now was. I was trapped, a prisoner in a body that wasn't mine, controlled by a remote in my sister's hand. The sheer helplessness of it was crushing. I lunged at her then, a desperate last-ditch effort to get the remote, to smash the source of this nightmare. But my body wouldn't obey. I took one step and my legs locked. My arms froze at my sides. I was paralyzed, able to do nothing but stand there, breathing in ragged, shallow gasps while my mind screamed. Lily just sighed, shaking her head. You still don't get it, do you? The chip controls everything. Your muscles, your movements, right now. I've got you on lockdown. So you can either stand there like a mannequin all day, or you can listen to what I have to say. Tears of pure frustration and terror welled in my eyes. I couldn't even wipe them away. They just traced hot paths down my impossibly smooth cheeks. I gave the slightest nod I could manage. Good girl, she said, and the condescension in her voice was like salt in a wound. She clicked a button, and I felt control return to my limbs. I immediately slumped onto my bed, burying my face in my hands, my long new hair falling around me like a cage. This was a nightmare, and it was only just beginning. I sat there, a trembling mess, while Lily paced in front of me, a general laying out the terms of surrender. So, here's the deal, she began, her tone all business, as you may or may not know. The school dance team is competing at the regionals next month. We have a real shot at winning this year, but we have a problem. Sarah, our best tumbler, broke her ankle last week. We're one person short, and our whole routine is built on a specific number of dancers. We can't find a replacement on such short notice who can learn the choreography. I looked up at her through my curtain of hair, my mind struggling to connect the dots. What does this have to do with me? My high-pitched voice asked, sounding weak and pathetic even to my own ears. It has everything to do with you, she said, stopping to look me directly in the eye. The chip Mr. Henderson designed. Its primary function was to implant and accelerate motor skill learning for soldiers or athletes. It can teach a body how to move, how to achieve perfect balance, perfect form, almost instantly. You, my dear brother, are going to be Sarah's replacement. The air left my lungs. What? No, absolutely not. I can't dance. I'm a guy. I play basketball. Lily just smirked. You were a guy who plays basketball. Now, you're a girl who dances. The chip will handle the details. You'll be graceful. You'll be flexible. You'll be perfect. I won't do it, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. The gesture felt wrong. The soft pressure beneath my shirt a constant, sickening reminder of my new reality. You can't make me. Her smirk vanished, replaced by that same cold expression from our fight. Oh, Alex, you still think you have a choice? She raised the remote again. Let me present you with your options. Option A, you join the dance team, you help us win, and this whole experiment lasts for 1 month. After regionals, I give you the remote and you can do whatever you want with it. Option B. She paused, letting the silence hang in the air. Then she pressed a sequence of buttons. The world started to warp. The floor seemed to rush up to meet me, or rather, I was shrinking. A dizzying, disorienting sensation washed over me as my body contracted. My limbs shortened. My perspective shifted. My pajama pants, which had been snug, were now pooling around my ankles. The room seemed to grow to an enormous size. I looked down at my hands. They were tiny, chubby, the hands of a small child. I looked in the mirror. Staring back at me was a little girl, no older than 8, with huge, terrified eyes and a face cherubic with baby fat. Option B, Lily continued, her voice now booming from what seemed like miles above me, is that I set the chip to an 8-year-old's biometrics, and you will go to school every day, in a pretty pink princess dress, with bows in your hair, and you'll explain to all your basketball buddies why you're suddenly in the 3rd grade. The horror of that image was so profound, so absolute, that it eclipsed everything else, the humiliation, the sheer social life-ending catastrophe of it. Being a teenage girl on the dance team was a nightmare, but being a little girl in a frilly dress that was a descent into a circle of hell I couldn't even comprehend. She pressed another button, and with another dizzying lurch, I grew back to my teenage girl proportions. I was breathing heavily, the phantom sensation of being small still clinging to me. So, Lily said, her voice back to its normal level, what's it going to be, pirouettes or playtime? There was no choice, not really. Fine, I choked out, the word tasting like ash. I'll do it, I'll dance. I knew you'd see it my way, she chirped, her cheerful demeanor returning instantly. Practice is in an hour. We need to get you dressed. What followed was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. Lily pulled a bag out from under her bed and unzipped it. Inside was a dance outfit, a hideously, violently pink dance outfit. Strip, she commanded. My hands shook as I pulled off my pajama top. For a moment, I just stared at my new chest. It was small, but perfectly formed, and utterly alien. I felt a hot blush creep up my neck and spread across my face. Turning away from her, I quickly shed my pajama pants. I stood there in my boxers, which felt absurdly and uncomfortably masculine against my now feminine frame. Those have to go too, Lily said, tossing a pair of pink lace panties at me. Can't have bunching under the leotard. Gritting my teeth so hard my jaw ached, I complied. The panties were soft and flimsy, a whisper of fabric that offered no sense of security. Then came the leotard. It was made of a slick, stretchy spandex material that clung to every single new curve of my body. Pulling it on was an ordeal. The fabric was cold against my skin, and the way it hugged my hips and chest felt both invasive and disturbingly right. It was designed for a body like this. Next were the tights. They were a pale, flesh-toned color, almost translucent. Lily instructed me to sit on the bed and roll them on carefully to avoid snags. The sensation of the fine nylon sheathing my legs, smoothing over my skin, was bizarre. My legs looked longer, more slender, the muscles defined in a way that was elegant rather than bulky. Finally, she handed me a short, frilly skirt, a tutu. It was a slightly darker shade of pink with layers of scratchy tulle, She tied it snugly around my new, narrower waist. She stepped back to admire her handiwork. Perfect. You look like a natural. I looked in the mirror. The boy I was, the boy I had been my entire life, was gone. Erased. In his place was a girl with long, dark hair pulled back into a high ponytail, a hairstyle Lily had fashioned with a few expert twists of her wrist. A girl with a dancer's posture, clad in pink from head to toe. A girl who looked terrified, ashamed, and utterly defeated. The stretch of the spandex, the tight band of the tutu at my waist, the whisper light feel of the tights on my legs, it was a sensory prison. Each new feeling a reminder of my loss of control. "Come on," Lily said, grabbing my arm. Her touch was firm. "Let's not be late for your first practice. Alexa." She led me out of the room. As we walked down the hallway, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hall mirror. My movements were different. The chip, it seemed, was already working. Instead of my usual clumsy stomp, my feet fell lightly on the carpet. My hips swayed with a subtle, fluid motion I couldn't control. My body was already learning to be a girl, even as my mind was still screaming in protest. The first steps of the dance had already begun, and I was just a puppet on a string. The dance studio was my own personal version of a nightmare. It was a huge room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors on one wall and ballet bars on the other. It smelled of floor wax and faint, floral perfume, and it was filled with girls, about a dozen of them, all in various states of stretching and warming up, all dressed in similar leotards and tights. They were a swirling mix of bright colors and lithe limbs. And when Lily and I walked in, all of them stopped to look. "Everyone, this is Alexa," Lily announced, her voice ringing with false confidence. "She's my cousin. She's an amazing dancer who just moved to town, and she's agreed to fill in for Sarah until after regionals." A murmur went through the group. They looked me up and down, their eyes taking in my new form. I felt like a bug under a microscope. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I kept my eyes fixed on my pink-slippered feet, another addition to the humiliating ensemble, my face burning with a blush that I was sure was visible from space. "She's a little shy," Lily added quickly, "but she's a fast learner." The teacher, a stern-looking woman named Ms. Dubois, clapped her hands. "All right, ladies, enough gawking. Let's get to work. Alexa, find a spot. We're running the opening number from the top." I moved woodenly to a spot in the back row, trying to make myself as small as possible. The music started, a fast-paced pop track with a driving beat. The girls around me exploded into motion, a synchronized flurry of kicks, turns, and leaps. My mind went blank with panic. I didn't know any of this. I was going to make a complete fool of myself. But then the chip kicked in. A strange warmth spread through my limbs. My body began to move before my brain could even issue a command. My arm snapped up into a perfect line. My leg extended in a flawless kick. I mirrored the girl in front of me with an eerie precision. My muscles, which hours ago had been trained for the brute force of a basketball court, now contracted and released with a dancer's grace. My balance was impeccable. When the time came for a turn, a pirouette, I braced myself for a clumsy stumble. Instead, I spun, once, twice, on the ball of my foot, my head whipping around to spot, just as I'd seen ballerinas do on TV. I landed as softly as a cat, perfectly in time with the music. I was a passenger in my own body, watching in stunned disbelief as it performed complex choreography without any conscious effort from me. The girls around me, who had been watching me with skeptical curiosity, now had looks of surprise and even approval on their faces. When the music stopped, I was breathing hard, a light sheen of sweat on my skin. But I had executed every move perfectly. Lily shot me a triumphant smirk from across the room. I just stared back, my mind reeling. The next few weeks fell into a surreal routine. Every morning, Lily would transform me into Alexa. We'd go to school, where I'd have to navigate the terrifying social landscape of being a teenage girl. I ate lunch with the dance team, listening to conversations about boys and makeup and teachers, feeling like a spy in a foreign country. Then after school, We'd have practice for 3 grueling hours. Slowly, terrifyingly, something began to shift inside me. The initial shock and humiliation started to fade, replaced by a strange sense of competence. The chip made sure I was never less than perfect in practice. My body, this new body, felt good to move. There was a lightness, an agility to it that was intoxicating. I could leap higher, stretch further, and move with a grace I'd never known. The burn in my muscles after a long session was a satisfying ache, a testament to hard work. The applause from Ms. Dubois and the other girls when I nailed a difficult sequence sent a thrill of pride through me that was uncomfortably real. And then there was Emma. She was one of the senior dancers on the team. With bright blonde hair she always wore in a messy bun and a smile that could light up the entire studio. She was kind, funny, and an incredible dancer. From day one, she'd been friendly to the shy new girl. She'd show me where to put my stuff, share her water bottle when I forgot mine, and offer quiet words of encouragement. During one practice, we were working on a partnered lift. I was paired with Emma. My role was to provide a stable base while she leaped. As she came down, she stumbled slightly, and I instinctively reached out, my hands finding her waist to steady her. Her skin was warm under the thin fabric of her leotard. She looked up at me, her blue eyes just inches from mine. "Thanks, Alexa," she said, her breath warm on my face. "Good catch." My heart did something strange. It wasn't just a beat. It was a flutter, a frantic little tap dance against my ribs. I pulled my hands away as if I'd been burned, my face flushing. It was a reaction I'd never had before, a dizzying mix of panic and something else. Something warm and pleasant. The masculine parts of my personality, the ones I had clung to as proof of my true self, were starting to erode. I found myself unconsciously adopting the mannerisms of the girls around me. The way I sat, the way I tilted my head when I listened, even the way I laughed. It was all happening without my permission. One evening before a dress rehearsal, Lily decided my stage presence needed work. This apparently meant a full makeup tutorial. "You can't go on stage barefaced," she declared, sitting me down in front of her vanity mirror. It was a fortress of powders, creams, and mysterious-looking tools. "You'll look washed out under the lights," I protested, but it was useless. She was on a mission. "Hold still," she ordered, coming at me with a terrifying little brush. She started with my eyes. The feeling of the soft bristles dusting powder over my eyelids was strange. Then came the eyeliner. I flinched as she drew a thin, black line along my upper lash line. It tickled, making my eyes water. "Stop squirming," she chided, her touch surprisingly gentle. "It's supposed to make your eyes look bigger, more expressive." When she was done, she held up a mirror. The effect was startling. The dark liner made my eyes, already large in this new face, seem enormous and deep. They looked pretty. The thought popped into my head unbidden, and I felt another wave of that hot, confusing blush. She moved onto my lips, applying a light, glossy pink color. The waxy, slightly sweet taste of the lipstick was another alien sensation. She finished by brushing a shimmery powder on my cheekbones and pulling my hair back into a sleek, tight bun at the crown of my head, a style she said was more professional than my usual ponytail. Each step of the process was a tiny surrender. The cold swipe of mascara, the soft puff of the powder brush, the scent of hairspray. I felt my resistance wearing down with every layer she applied. When she was finished, I stared at the girl in the mirror. It was Alexa, but an elevated, more polished version, confident, alluring. A part of me, a part I was terrified to acknowledge, didn't hate it. It felt finished. It felt right. That night, on the bus ride home from rehearsal, I sat in my warm-up clothes, a form-fitting jacket and matching yoga pants that hugged my legs. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Alexa stared back, her makeup a little smudged, her expression thoughtful. For the first time, The question that entered my mind wasn't, when can I be a boy again? It was something far more dangerous. If this is what it's like to be a girl, would I be happier this way? The thought was a betrayal to the Alex I used to be, but the Alexa I was becoming couldn't seem to shake it. The day after the dress rehearsal was a Saturday. There was no practice. Lily, in a rare moment of what she probably considered mercy, decided to give me the day off. "Don't get used to it," she'd said that morning, standing by my bed with the remote in her hand. "But you looked a little stressed yesterday. Consider this a reset." She pressed a button. The change back was just as disorienting as the change there, but in reverse. It was a feeling of expansion, of coarseness returning. A tingling wave washed over me, and I felt my shoulders broaden, my hips narrow, my chest flattened with a sensation of emptiness that was almost a physical ache. My hair retracted, shrinking back to its familiar buzzed length. My skin prickled as it regained its former texture, the faint roughness of familiar landscape I hadn't realized I'd missed until it was gone. When it was over, I lay there for a moment, breathing heavily. I was Alex again. I was me. I should have been relieved. I should have been ecstatic. But all I felt was a profound and unsettling sense of loss. I got out of bed. My body felt heavy, clumsy. My own feet thudded on the floorboards with a weight that seemed alien. I walked to my closet and pulled on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, my standard uniform. The denim felt stiff and abrasive against my skin. Like sandpaper, the loose cotton of the shirt hung on my frame, hiding my shape, making me feel formless and clunky, where Alexa's body was all light, fluid lines. Alex's body felt like a collection of awkward, jutting angles. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My face, my old face, it was all there, the sharp jaw, the straight brows, the shadow of stubble. It was the face I'd seen every day for 17 years. But now, it looked wrong. It looked harsh, plain. The softness was gone. The large, expressive eyes that Lily had so carefully defined with eyeliner were just my normal eyes again, looking small and tired. My lips were a pale, thin line. I was me again, so why did I feel like I was wearing a costume? I spent the day in a daze. I tried to play video games, but my hands, now larger and less nimble, felt clumsy on the controller. I went outside to shoot some hoops in the driveway, but my movements were all wrong. My center of gravity had shifted back, and the familiar rhythm of dribbling and shooting was gone. I felt off balance, uncoordinated. The effortless grace the chip had programmed into my female form had vanished, leaving behind a jarring awkwardness in my male one. Everything felt dull. The world seemed less vibrant. Without the constant chatter of the dance team, the house was too quiet. Without the physical exertion of practice, my body felt restless and lethargic. Later that afternoon, I found myself standing in front of my full-length mirror again. I closed my eyes and tried to picture Alexa. I could see her so clearly in my mind's eye, the long hair, the graceful posture, the face that was both mine and not mine. I remembered the feeling of the leotard against my skin, the satisfying pull of a deep stretch, the way my hair would whip around during a fast turn. I remembered Emma's smile, the light in her eyes when she looked at me at Alexa. A strange ache settled deep in my chest. It was an unfamiliar emotion, a cocktail of longing and confusion. A part of me, a significant part, missed her. I missed being her. The thought was a thunderclap in the quiet of my mind. It was one thing to find a strange competence, or even a flicker of enjoyment, in the forced transformation. It was another thing entirely to be back in my own skin, my own gender, my own life, and to find it lacking. I had spent weeks counting down the seconds until I could be Alex again. I had dreamed of this freedom, of reclaiming my own body, but now that I had it, it felt empty. The freedom felt like a cage of a different kind, a cage of stiff denim, clumsy movements, and a face in the mirror that no longer felt completely like my own. For the first time, I wasn't sure which side of the mirror held the real prisoner. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned, the rough fabric of my sheets irritating my skin. My mind was a battlefield. Alex versus Alexa. The past versus the present. What I was supposed to be versus what I was becoming. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and went downstairs for a glass of water. The house was dark and silent. As I passed the living room, a sliver of moonlight from the window caught something on the coffee table. It was small and black. The remote. Lily must have forgotten it there. She'd gotten a text from a friend and run out of the house in a hurry earlier that evening, and in her haste, she'd left behind the key to my existence. My heart started to pound. I crept closer, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. There it was, lying next to a stack of magazines. My first instinct was pure, primal rage. I should grab it. I should smash it into 1,000 pieces with the nearest heavy object. I should destroy it, obliterate it, and free myself from this nightmare forever. I would be Alex, permanently. No more leotards, no more makeup, no more confusion. I reached out, my hand trembling. My fingers brushed against the cool plastic. And then I hesitated. The memory of my day washed over me, the feeling of wrongness in my own skin, the clumsiness, the dull gray feeling of being just Alex, and with it came the memory of Alexa, the lightness, the grace, the thrill of nailing a difficult routine, the warmth of Emma's smile. Destroying the remote meant destroying her too, and the thought of that, I realized with a jolt, was unbearable. My hand closed around the remote. It felt small and powerful. A little black stick of dynamite that could either blow up my life or rebuild it. My anger was still there, a hot coal in my gut, but it was now competing with a different emotion, a dizzying, terrifying curiosity. What would it be like to do it myself? Not as a punishment, not as a prank, but as a choice. My choice. I couldn't resist. Clutching the remote, I tiptoed back up to my room, closing the door as softly as I could. My hands were slick with sweat. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, my reflection a shadowy figure in the dark. I took a deep, shuddering breath and raised the remote. My thumb hovered over the main activation button. This is insane. A voice in my head screamed, "Don't do it." But another voice, a quieter, more persuasive one, whispered, "Just once, just to see." I pressed the button. The sensation was immediate, but this time, I was ready for it. I didn't fight it. I let the tingling wave wash over me, observing it with a strange detachment. I watched in the mirror as the transformation began. My shoulders narrowed, pulling inward. It didn't hurt, but it was an intense pressure, like a slow, deep stretch. I felt a subtle, pleasant ache in my chest as it began to swell, the soft tissue filling out with a familiar fullness. My waist cinched, and my hips widened, the shift in my pelvic bone a tangible, internal grind that was more strange than painful. My skin softened, the change rippling over me like a cool wave, erasing every rough edge. My hair spilled from my scalp, a waterfall of silk cascading down my back. The change in my face was the most fascinating. I watched my jawline soften, my cheeks fill out, my lips plump. It was like watching a sculptor gently smooth and refine a clay model. The whole process took less than a minute, but I was aware of every microsecond because I had chosen it. The fear was replaced with a kind of awe. It was my body, and I was in control of its most fundamental properties. When it was over, Alexa stared back at me from the mirror, but this time, her eyes weren't filled with terror. They were wide with a mixture of shock, fascination, and a burgeoning, illicit thrill. I took a tentative step. The movement was fluid, effortless. I raised a hand to my face, tracing the line of my new jaw. The skin was impossibly soft. It was real. I had done this. Slowly, deliberately, I walked over to my dresser, tucked away in the back of a drawer, where Lily had told me to keep them, was my dance bag. My fingers, now long and slender, trembled as I unzipped it. I pulled out the pale, flesh-toned tights. They felt different in my hands now, not like an instrument of humiliation, but like an accessory, a choice. I sat on the edge of my bed and carefully rolled them on. The sensation of the fine nylon encasing my legs was no longer just a bizarre feeling. It was a cool, smooth caress that felt sleek and strangely comforting. I pulled on a simple black leotard and a pair of dance shorts I'd been given. The spandex hugged my new form, a second skin that emphasized every curve. I stood before the mirror again. I wasn't the terrified boy in a pink tutu anymore. I was a young woman in simple, elegant practice wear. I looked good. I looked strong and graceful. A name echoed in the silence of my mind. It wasn't the name Lily had mockingly given me. This time, it felt like it was my own. "Alexa," I whispered. The voice that answered was mine, hers, a clear, soft soprano. Hearing it, saying it myself, felt like turning a key in a lock. I stood there for a long time, just looking, turning this way and that, watching the way my muscles moved, the way my hair swayed. A slow, tentative smile spread across my face in the mirror. It wasn't a smile of happiness. Not yet. It was a smile of discovery, of dawning realization. This wasn't just a disguise anymore. This was a part of me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was exhilarated. The next dance practice was different. Armed with the secret knowledge of the remote, I felt a new sense of agency. I was no longer just Lily's puppet. I was a willing participant. I was Alexa because, on some level, I had chosen to be. This newfound confidence must have shown I danced with more passion, more expression. Ms. Dubois even commented on it. "Whatever you did this weekend, Alexa, keep doing it. There's a fire in your movements today." The praise sent a warm glow through me, but it was after practice, as we were all packing up, that the world tilted on its axis. Most of the other girls had already left. It was just me, Lily, and Emma left in the studio. Lily was busy talking to Ms. Dubois. I was sitting on the floor, pulling off my dance shoes and stretching my tired muscles. "Hey," a soft voice said. I looked up. Emma was standing over me, a small smile on her face. She was holding 2 bottles of water. She offered one to me. "You were amazing today," she said, sitting down on the floor beside me, our shoulders almost touching. Like, really amazing. You've been great this whole time, but today was something else. "Thanks," I managed to say, my voice a little breathless. I took a long drink of water, mostly to have something to do, to hide the blush I could feel creeping up my neck. "You know," she said, her voice dropping a little lower, becoming more confidential. "When Lily first brought you in, I wasn't sure. You were so quiet and seemed so scared, but you're cuter than I thought." My heart did that fluttery thing again, only this time it was 10 times more intense. Cuter. She thought I was cute. The compliment landed with a strange, dizzying force. Boys called girls cute. I was a boy, but she wasn't talking to a boy. She was talking to Alexa, and Alexa was blushing. She reached out, and for a second, I thought she was going to touch my arm or my shoulder. I instinctively tensed, ready to flinch away, but her gesture was much softer. A few strands of my long hair had escaped my bun during practice and were stuck to my sweaty temple. With a delicate touch, her fingers brushed the hair away, tucking it behind my ear. Her touch was feather light, but it sent a jolt of electricity through my entire body. It was an incredibly intimate gesture, simple, but loaded with a meaning I couldn't quite decipher. Her fingers lingered for a fraction of a second too long against my skin, and her blue eyes met mine. In that moment, the cavernous dance studio seemed to shrink until it was just the few inches of space between us. Her gaze was intense, searching. It felt like she was trying to tell me a secret without words. "You have really pretty eyes," she whispered, her smile turning a little shy. I was completely, utterly frozen. My mind was a blank slate. Alex, The boy who knew how to talk to girls, how to joke and flirt in a clumsy teenage boy way, was gone. He had no frame of reference for this, for a girl looking at him at her with such open, gentle affection. All I could do was stare back, my heart hammering in my chest, my breath caught in my throat. I wanted to pull away, to run, to shout that this was all a mistake, that I wasn't who she thought I was. But I also didn't. A part of me, the part that was becoming Alexa, wanted to lean into that touch. It wanted to stay in this moment, in the warmth of her gaze. It felt nice to be seen this way, to be considered pretty, to be the object of this soft, feminine attention. It was a kind of validation I had never experienced or even known I wanted. She must have seen the panic and confusion in my eyes, because she pulled her hand back, a faint pink blush coloring her own cheeks. "Sorry," she mumbled, looking down at her water bottle. "Was that weird?" "No," I said, the word coming out as a squeak. I cleared my throat, trying to find my voice. "No, it wasn't weird." We sat in an awkward, charged silence for a moment before Lily called my name from across the room. "Alexa, let's go." The spell was broken. "I have to go," I said to Emma, probably too quickly. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing my bag. "Okay," she said, looking up at me. I'll see you tomorrow." "Yeah, tomorrow," I repeated, and practically fled the studio. As Lily and I walked to the car, she was chattering about the practice, but I didn't hear a word. My mind was replaying that one moment over and over again. The feeling of Emma's fingers on my skin, the look in her eyes, the whispered compliment. It was a turning point, a profound, terrifying, exhilarating turning point. My conflicted feelings about being Alexa were no longer just an internal debate about my own identity and comfort. Now, there was someone else involved, someone I was starting to care about, someone who saw Alexa, liked Alexa, and had no idea about the boy hiding beneath the surface. The lie, which had started as Lily's prank, was now becoming my own, and it was getting more complicated and more compelling by the second. The next few days were a blur of internal conflict. I had the remote. I had the power. Every night, I would go to my room, lock the door, and hold the small black device in my hand. The choice was mine. I could press the button and become Alexa for the night, practicing my dance moves in front of the mirror, getting more comfortable in her skin, or I could throw it in the trash, smash it with a hammer, and be Alex forever. The choice should have been easy. My entire life, my friends, my identity. It was all tied to being Alex. That was the logical path, the safe path. But my heart, or whatever part of me was making these new, strange decisions, kept hesitating. I thought about my life as Alex. It wasn't a bad life, but it felt muted. It was a life of basketball games, awkward conversations, and a constant, low-level pressure to be tough, to be cool, to fit into the narrow box labeled guy. I was lonely, I realized. I had friends, teammates, but I didn't have anyone I could really talk to. My arguments with Lily were the most passionate conversations I ever had. Then I thought about my life as Alexa. It was terrifying, confusing, and built on a foundation of lies, but it was also vibrant. It was filled with the camaraderie of the dance team, the physical joy of movement, the quiet encouragement of Emma. As Alexa, I felt things more intensely. The pride of a well-executed routine, the sting of criticism from Ms. Dubois, the warmth of a shared joke with the other girls. As Alexa, I felt alive. I felt like I was finally part of something. Was it the chip influencing my personality, as Lily had suggested it could, or was this a part of me that had been there all along? A part that only a female body and a different social context could unlock? I didn't know. All I knew was that the idea of giving it up, of silencing Alexa for good, felt like a kind of death. Even my relationship with Lily was changing. The power dynamic had shifted now that I had possession of the remote. She knew I had it. She'd torn her room apart looking for it, but she didn't demand it back. Instead, a strange unspoken truce settled between us. The prank had evolved into something neither of us had anticipated. One afternoon, as I was getting ready for practice as Alexa, a transformation I now performed myself every day, Lily came and leaned in my doorway, watching me. I was struggling to master the art of the French braid, my fingers still clumsy with the intricate weaving. "You're twisting it the wrong way," she said, walking in. She gently pushed my hands aside. "Here, let me." I sat still as her expert fingers took over, deftly braiding my long hair. Her touch was no longer that of a captor, but simply a sister. "You know," she said quietly, her eyes focused on her work, "that blue leotard really brings out your eyes." I looked at our reflection in the mirror. Two girls, nearly identical, one helping the other with her hair. It was a scene of such normal sisterhood that it made my chest ache. "I never thought," she started, then trailed off. "Thought what I prompted." She finished the braid, securing it with a tie. She met my eyes in the mirror, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "I never thought you'd be so good at it. At all of this. I thought you'd hate every second. I thought you'd fight me every step of the way." "I did," I said, my voice soft. "I do. Sometimes. But not all the time." She finished for me. It wasn't a question. "You actually look happy. You're a better girl than I am. In some ways, you're nicer to people." She gave a small, wry smile. "You're definitely prettier." The comment, coming from her, was stunning. This whole thing had started because she wanted to punish me, to force me to see her world. But now it seemed like she was seeing something new, too. She wasn't just seeing her brother in a costume. She was seeing Alexa, a person. The choice loomed larger than ever. To resist was to go back to the familiar, to the life I was supposed to have. To accept was to embrace this new, uncertain identity, to step into a world where I felt more myself than I ever had before, but where I was living a lie that could shatter at any moment. I remembered Emma's hand on my face, the genuine warmth in her eyes. If she ever found out the truth, she would be horrified, disgusted. She would hate me. The thought was a physical pain, but the thought of never seeing that look in her eyes again, of going back to being the clumsy, emotionally constipated Alex who she would never even notice, that was somehow worse. My hand strayed to the remote, which I now kept hidden in my dance bag. It wasn't a tool of torture anymore. It was a key, but I still didn't know which door it truly opened a prison of lies, or the freedom to be a person I was only just beginning to discover. The night before the regional competition, I couldn't sleep. The fate of the dance team, my fragile friendship with Emma, and my own chaotic identity all hung in the balance. Tomorrow, I would perform as Alexa on a massive stage, under bright lights, in front of hundreds of people. And after that, what? Lily had promised that after regionals, the experiment was over. The choice would be entirely mine. I could destroy the chip's controller, locking myself as Alex forever, or I could keep it and continue to live this strange, dual existence. I got out of bed and padded over to the mirror. The moon was full, casting a soft, silvery light into the room. I picked up the remote from my nightstand. The plastic was smooth and familiar in my palm. With a deep breath, I pressed the button. I didn't watch the transformation this time. I closed my eyes and just felt it. The familiar pull and shift, the softening and lengthening. It was no longer jarring. It felt like coming home. When I opened my eyes, Alexa was there. She looked tired, her dark eyes shadowed with worry, but she was beautiful. Our costume for the competition was hanging on the back of my closet door. It was a shimmering, deep sapphire blue dress, with a flowing skirt and intricate beading on the bodice. On impulse, I took it down. The fabric was cool and heavy in my hands. I slipped out of my pajamas and into the dress. It fit perfectly, hugging my torso before flaring out at the hips. The beading sparkled in the moonlight. I looked like something out of a dream. I stood there, in the quiet of my room, in a girl's body, wearing a beautiful dress, and I felt a sense of peace that Alex had never known. This body, this identity, it had been forced on me, a punishment for my ignorance, but somewhere along the way, the punishment had started to feel like a gift, a strange, complicated, terrifying gift. Was this a curse or a blessing? Was the remote chain that bound me, or a key that had set me free if I chose to be Alex again? Would I spend the rest of my life feeling like a phantom, haunted by the ghost of the girl I could have been if I chose to continue as Alexa? How long could I sustain the lie? And what about Emma? Her face flashed in my mind, her bright smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. The memory of her touch still made my skin tingle. If she knew the truth, that the girl she'd befriended, the girl she'd called cute, was really a boy from her school, would she run? Would she feel betrayed? Or could she, somehow, see past the body and see the person I was becoming? Could she accept me, the real me? This confusing, impossible blend of Alex and Alexa. I looked at the girl in the mirror. This creation of science and circumstance, this person who felt more real than the boy I'd been for 17 years. A question hung in the air between us, a silent, critical choice that would define the rest of my life. Who am I and who do I want to be? On the face of the girl in the mirror, a smile slowly formed. It wasn't a happy smile, or a sad one. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated uncertainty, a smile of fear and of hope. It was the smile of someone standing on the edge of a cliff, about to find out if they could fly. The remote was still in my hand, and for the first time, I felt the true weight of its power. The future was a blank page, and I was the only one who could decide what to write.